Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Joni Young. If you're new here, please hit that subscribe. Today I'm going to be showing you step by step exactly how I painted this horse today on a 16 by 20 black primed canvas, and I'm using a large Filbert brush. This is a number 11. I'm only using titanium white and Mars black today to create all of these shades of gray, and using black for my darkest contrast and shadows, as well as the titanium white for my brightest highlights. So as you can see here, I'm just going to start by coming in with the bottom of the horse's face, pulling up into his neck, and then up along here where the top of his head is going to be. We'll have a little bit of his hair coming over in front of him and falling on his nose, and then we'll come in with his ears. I'm going to just brush in patches here and blend softly where we're seeing more of the light hitting his face. And I kind of wanted to have a bit of a shimmery, satiny kind of a look. I love that with horses, and I thought this would be really, really striking and quite nice done on a black canvas. So I'm adding this to my series of animals and birds painted on a black canvas. I will have a link somewhere in this video or below for the other ones if you'd like to go watch those tutorials. So I'm going to work on his nostril area here, and then softly blend in a little bit more just so that I get a nice soft look to where his shadows and his highlights meet. I want there to be a little bit of an in-between mid-tone there. Now keep in mind, you can use any brush that you feel comfortable with. If you don't have this large Filbert brush, you can also use a round brush. You can use a flat brush. And I'm going to be changing up my brushes a little bit when I need to get into some smaller areas like his eye. I'm going to be using a liner brush. So as you can see, we've got his ears up there, and then there's a highlight on the left side of his ear. And I'm just using light gray at this point. I'll be adding more and more white as I need to build up those highlights. I'm going to add just a little bit more black down here, working on his mouth and nose area. And this is where it's a lot darker than the rest of his face. So we can't really see too much of the detail on the other side of his face on the right there. There's just a little bit of a line, a white line, and a little kind of a half circle there. And if you're a little bit uncomfortable and unsure about that area and you're not, you just don't really know what to do in that one spot, what I like to do is just come down with some hair. You could always do that, or just make it more in shadow. Yeah, you could just camouflage those areas on his face with some of the hair that we're going to be adding later. You can just make his hair a little bit longer, and that'll hang more over his face and just kind of camouflage areas that you may not be as confident with. So we've got a line that comes in on an angle right here. And I'm just adding a little bit of white to my brush that still has that gray in it. Just blocking in these lines and these shapes and these brush strokes, and all of this together will make sense at the end. And this is how you do it, one step at a time and brush stroke at a time like this. And don't get discouraged, you guys. It always looks a little bit funny mid-process like this. You have to just tell yourself to keep going and don't give up until you're completely done the painting, and then you can decide if you want to fix it or try again. Yeah, never judge your paintings partway through. So just add a little bit more of a highlight here on the left side of both of his ears. And I'm just going to be blocking in a little bit of light here, very light brush strokes, sort of a scumble and a dry brush, just with light gray. And you can decide how bright you want yours to be. You can, and same with the face, you can make his highlights brighter, or you can make them a little bit more subdued by using less white and more of the black, of course. And yes, I know that you guys are going to be asking if you can do this on a white canvas. You absolutely can. This would look great on a white canvas as well. And you don't have to do anything different. The only thing you might want to do is where you have the highlights on the ears, you might just want to have a little bit of a line, an outline of black, just so that it doesn't get lost in the white canvas, just so that it shows up a little bit more. Okay, so I'm adding little tiny dabs of black in here for the parts of his ear. So a little fold in his ear at the bottom there. And then I just did a big arch for the top of his mane and another little highlight. And I've switched over to a smaller Filbert brush now, just so I can have a little bit more control with some of these smaller areas. And I'm pulling and tapping very lightly to give a soft, fuzzy, furry effect on his ear there. I'm going to work a little bit more on his nostril here. There's little lines, half circles here. Now they don't join up, they start in different areas, kind of inside where the other one left off. And then a little line there for his mouth. Again, just with light gray or white. And I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more white to the other side of his nose. Okay, now taking a bit more white, I'm really going to play up on this area right here where it's going to be nice and bright. We're going to have quite a nice highlight here. So I'm going to pull on an angle up and around his nose and then come in from the middle of his nostrils in between there. And we're going to have like two triangle shapes, one in the middle, and then we're going to leave that black triangle for now. We'll soften the edges a little bit later on. Just going to come in with a very light little scoop there for his eye, and then it goes, or under his eye, and then it goes on a sharp angle like that. And then we'll do a little highlight above and around and between the bottom of his ear and the top of his eye. A nice bright highlight again right there, and then down on an angle. Now I just want to blend a little bit, soften this, tap and pull carefully right around the edge of his face and right here again in between those nostrils and above that black mark. I'm going to tap so I kind of get the black and the white to kind of blend into one another, like you're getting a gray tone in there, so it doesn't just go black to white. It's a gradual blending of those colors. And that will just give us more of a nice rounded look to his face. So just light little taps like that. That will give us that very velvety, soft, furry feel and texture that horses have. So I'm going to continue to build up with my white, knowing that each time I do this it's going to dry a little bit darker, so I might have to do this a few times. And there's a little area in here, a little patch where it's going to be darker, so I'm adding a bit of dark gray that I just made by taking a bit of my black and my white. Okay, I'm going to come around now with light gray and make his neck and underneath his cheeks there, his nose and mouth stand out a little bit more. Just defining this area. So we've got that light gray outlining, and then I'm coming in with some dark gray, more black here, but you can still see it. It's lighter, 1 to 2 shades lighter than the black canvas. I'm just going to sort of fill this in and then scumble and soften right up to that diagonal line on the left of his eye at the top. Now what I want to do, and I decided this just right here at this point, I decided to not leave the canvas completely black. I wanted to have a little bit of light kind of around his face and his ears. I'm going to soften this and make it a bit more subdued, but I have to come in with more paint initially here to begin with, just because I know it's going to dry a bit darker. So I'm going to come in and be generous with my paint and then start to blend some of it out. And I'm going to just pull and twist my brush, making little circles like this, just for some sort of a pattern in the background. And then tap. I've got my large Filbert brush here again, you guys can see. And with white, I'm going to carefully outline the top of his head and the outer part of his ears. Now you might want to use a smaller brush for this, and you'll be able to do this much more carefully and a little bit more controlled. And I'm going to pull a little bit of light gray above his mane and his neck here. Just soft little ripply brush strokes and then little circles. I'll also bring it down in here between his mouth, nose, and his neck. And this is completely optional. I just like to show you guys a few different things so you'll know what it looks like if you have a bit of gray in the background, because this is eventually going to look sort of gray. Or you can leave it completely black too. You have a few options and things that you could do with this painting. And of course, if you guys want any one-on-one advice, need any questions answered, and some more information, I will be happy to connect with you over on Patreon, and I'll leave a link below this video. So I'm softening out this paint now, the background, with just one of my little soft haired brushes here. You can use any dry brush you have, any mop brush, blending brush, anything, any brush will work that you can kind of blend that softly around with, and it'll kind of make all those hard edges in the background soften up and disappear, make it look blurry. That's kind of what you're after. I'm going to build up a little bit on his nose here, adding some more black and then a little bit more of the light gray. You just have to be really patient and take your time. I always like to have on some calming music in the background in my studio when I'm painting, and just make sure that I try to stay in a happy, content mood while I'm painting. If I have something, especially if I have something that's a little bit intimidating for me, and because I don't paint in a lot of animals. I used to, and I probably sound like a broken record. I've been saying this in my past videos because I've been doing quite a few of these now. But I used to paint a lot of animals for years, and then I just haven't done them in a really long time. So I've got to get back into it, but I tell you, I really am enjoying myself. So I've got a really small filbert brush. You can use any brush you want for this though, and I did 3 little white dots. And I started on the end of his eye and did 2 more just to the halfway mark of his eyeball. Then I did a little white scoop underneath, and I'm blending it now into the gray. I might lighten that up a little bit more after. Now I think we're going to start working on the hair, which is the most fun I had with this entire painting. I loved creating his curly, beautiful mane. And I'm just going to define this ear here a little bit more, adding some more black inside of here. Okay, and there's another little patch right here of mid-tone gray. So it's going to be darker than the light spots on his face, but lighter than the black. So you've got a wide range of shades of gray. You just can't go wrong, okay guys? Don't worry at all. I'm going to do my second layer of white and blend it into the gray underneath very softly so that I get all these different soft gray tones. I'm going to soften over this black area a little bit because it's a bit too dark. Now that I've balanced out my white, I need to come in here and move this shadow darker patch over. I had it a little bit too far over towards the middle, so I need to come in here with a little bit of black or just dark gray and add that on the far right. I'm just going to soften with my finger there, and I've got a miniature mop brush. It's dry. You don't want to get it wet. You want to keep it nice and dry and soft and fluffy. And then I'm just doing soft little circles, barely touching that canvas and paint, just to give it a very soft blended look. Now back to his eye with a clean brush and white paint. Gonna make these white highlights on his pupil a little bit larger. Now if you notice, they were not perfect little dots or circles. They're kind of little dabs on an angle, and the very first one on the far left is a little bit longer than the other two. So right underneath that bright highlight that's on an angle going up from the corner of his eye, I'm going to add dark gray right underneath that and bring it down a little bit lower. Now I'm going to add a bit more white here to make this area lighter gray. Now with more black, I'm going to shape his eye a little bit better. There's a little black line right above his eye, and then shadow right here in the corner of his eye that goes up into his hair. We're not going to see all the details of the inner corner of his eye in the middle there because it's in shadow, of course, from all that hair. And just working a little bit more down here on his mouth and his nostrils. Adding more black at times, and then a little bit more of my white or light gray. Tapping on the far right and then gently pulling and wrapping it around. Very, very subtle though. We're only going to see a fraction of that nostril. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit more of the gray and those lines in there again. So this just goes to show you guys that you may have to go over your lines. It's okay if you, because I do it all the time. I keep going back to this and adjusting it and fixing it. So you're not going to always get everything right the first time. It takes time, it takes layers, and it takes a lot of patience. But just don't give up, you guys. You can do this, trust me. And I've just been blown away by all of your pictures you guys have been tagging me in and sharing with me through my email and on Instagram. Thanks so much, you guys. It really makes my day when I see all your pictures. And by the way, you're doing such a fabulous job. I'm so proud of all of you guys. So just adding more white, making these highlights stand out. And tapping lots of little dabs with the tip of my Filbert brush for little bits of freckles or little spots that he has down there with white and gray. I really want to come back in here with a bit more of my dark gray. So it's just about all black, but it's going to blend in and pick up a bit of that gray that I have underneath. And I just do light little lines, and then I'm going to get the outer corner of his eye, outline that too, and you can see it kind of goes up on an angle. And now I'm going to start working on his hair, so I'm just pulling and wisping with my gray and my long liner brush for some little hairs that you can just do one at a time, singular like this. Have a little bit more control, and I'm going to get kind of the direction that the wind is sort of blowing his mane in. And now I've got my fan brush. I've got a medium-sized fan brush. I've got it wet so those bristles kind of separate and clump into little chunks like that in sections. So we've got those spaces in between. Those are really important when working on hair. And I'm using light gray. It's up to you what shade of gray you want to use. Just make sure that you can see some black through there. Otherwise it's going to be all solid and you're not going to have any hair looking three-dimensional or layered. So I'm just very lightly using the tip of my brush, pulling and wisping, just kind of flicking off gently and pulling off to a curve to give his hair that flow and to feel like the wind is blowing. This is how we're creating movement, and it's very easy to do as long as you have the right technique, which I'm going to be showing you lots in the rest of this video because I do this many times, and the right brush. So a fan brush is excellent for creating hair. Fan brush, the Wisp eventail brush. Now those eventail Wisp brushes, they're from the Zen company and they are on Amazon. I found a link for them, so I'll try to remember to add it below this video. So now you can see I'm very lightly pushing, letting off, pushing and letting off. I'm kind of wiggling, so I'm giving it pressure, letting off very quickly as I'm dragging the brush down. That instantly gives us that curly haired look. Isn't that cool? And then I turn my brush kind of sideways to make the hair look skinnier and pull off towards the right side of the canvas, and pulling with the same direction as the hair is on the top of his head. Now we'll sneak some hairs in here that are coming from the other side, and I'm going to keep doing this process. So pulling from the top, and then part way down, a quarter of the way down, we're going to start kind of doing that letting off, pushing, letting off, wiggling while we're pulling the brush to create that curly haired look. And this was so fun to do. I can't wait to hear what you guys think of this technique. It's really, really fun. So pushing, wiggling, letting off. And I'm just going to slowly, one layer at a time, build his hair up, or her hair. And I'm going to add a little bit more dimension by adding some more shadow in there. So where it goes in and it's darker, I'm going to play up on that a little bit by adding some darker gray and black. So right here, I'm going in, pushing and pulling and flicking, just small little areas in between all those whites, the white areas. So this gives him that curly haired look. Not only that texture to his hair, but it makes it look shimmery and really satiny and shiny looking. Just by doing this simple technique, anybody watching this, you guys can do this, and it's really fun. All you have to do, if you're not sure and you've never done this before, just practice it on a piece of paper or cardboard or an old canvas, whatever you have lying around. Just practice, and you guys, I think you'll be so surprised at how easy it is to do and effective. So I'm going to come back in now with a little bit more of the white. And I want the ends of his hair to be lighter than the rest. Like he's got highlights on the very ends of his hair. So I'll be pulling and flicking with a little bit more white and just a tiny bit of water on my brush to help pull that paint right out of my brush. Okay, so we're just going to continue to do this, layering, adding one layer at a time, taking our time doing this, reloading the brush when we need to. You don't want to push too hard with your brush. And I'm going to come from the top and between his ears with a bit more white here on the tip of my brush again, making it look like the light is just reflecting right down, giving him a nice bright highlight and shine. See how we're pulling off towards past the far end of the canvas. Now I'm going to add, I want this to look more in shadow down here. This will make his hair and his highlights stand out a bit more, so I'm going over this with a little bit more of my dark gray. I'm going to pull into the end of his hair. I need to have a little bit more shadow under there for the three-dimensional look to his hair to work. So I'm going to also do that up top here. Just pull and tap, blend it any way you want, just with some of that gray. Or like I said earlier, you can keep it completely black if you want as well. So I'm going in and adding dark gray and a little bit more black where I need it to be darker than the dark gray. So wherever you want it to stand out and have the most contrast and depth, you'll just use more white and more black. So here is my really cool new brush that I've been using. It's the Eventail Wisp fan brush. And I'm going to use this to add some more texture to his hair. And I'll do the same thing over here with my black first. Get a little bit more shadow going on in there. So you can just play around with his hair forever. You could add layer after layer. And it's so nice with acrylics how quickly you can achieve this, and you can cover something up if you're not happy with it. It's very forgiving. And here we go with the black. Going in between there, making all his shadows stand out. So I'm just going to pick away a little bit here with some more of my shadow color, dark gray, and right down there at the bottom corner of his eye. And I'm going to start adding some more highlights to his hair. This is my favorite part when I really start building it up right in here. I just love this brush. See how cool that is? And it's so instant. Like, you just get instant satisfaction with this brush and the technique. Now we'll work some more on his hair, and then we'll start working on the bridle. So I'm just taking more of my white now, and I'm pulling lightly, turning my brush to make it skinnier, and flicking gently, sort of in a soft scoop, like it's sweeping off towards the right side of the canvas from the breeze that's blowing. And then creating tight little wiggles here to keep that curl. All right, we're just going to keep on doing this until we get enough of the hair down here so that it's not totally see-through. We want it to kind of blend in and sort of camouflage the light patches on his body underneath. And I'm back to my small Filbert brush. I'm going to start pulling these out a little bit longer, trying to make them look tighter together and more wispy like on the end, and bringing up some more highlights now up top here. I'm going to redefine these little highlights on his eyeball and down here on his nostril, so those little lines. So I'll continue doing this for a few more minutes, and then we'll start working on his bridle. Back to my liner brush, I'm going to add a few little hairs in here, just one at a time. So it takes a combination of brushes, and then right back to my fan brush again. So see how I've gotten it to have those little areas that are separated in between so that we have some shadow showing underneath. You don't want your fan to be completely fanned out. You want to have those little areas in between. And how I like to do that is just by kind of just dunking my brush right in the water, and then I give it a tap off on the towel, and then they kind of just go off into little sections on their own like that, and then I dip my brush into the paint and just start pulling and flicking. So I'm doing the same thing now with my black. And this is just to create more shadow underneath, ultimately creating more depth. Do the same thing on the top. And a little bit more in between these highlights here for his curly hair. Okay, so as I continue to build up the highlights and shadows and depth on his hair, I'm going to let you guys watch this for a few minutes, and I'll meet you back here when we start our next step, which is going to be some more details on his eye. And then we'll start working on that bridle using a few smaller brushes. Okay guys, so as we finish up his hair, we're going to switch over to his eye now, and I'm going to use my liner brush. I'm taking dark gray, and I'm going to add a little mid-tone in there, and then a little dark gray scoop underneath his eye, and then I'm just going to soften that, blend it out. Just redo my black, and then I want to do a scoop of black under that gray scoop under his eye. I'm going to tap a little few dots there and then pull 2 lines, and I'm just doing this very roughly. You can take your time a little bit more. Just painting this really loosely. Don't want it to be the complete focal point of this painting. I just want to add to it. So white with my liner brush, a line that comes up from that little knot that we created just by doing a few little short lines and dabs, up to the far side on the left of his ear. Then we're going to take black and do a shadow in between so it separates and we have 2 white lines, and then we have the shadow underneath. So see how quickly you can achieve that? And it looks fine just like that. But I'm going to add a few more highlights. I'm going to go in with some more white. And make this a little bit straighter. It's a bit on an angle too much, so I'm going to just scoop and scrape with one of my flat brushes here. And it looked fine how it was. I'm just being a bit picky, so I want to just straighten that a little bit more. And then I'm going to take white, using quite a bit of white here. I'm going to start right behind his ear and then pull and scoop just to brighten that up and make it really show up. Now there's going to be another little knot right there. So I'm just doing little tiny lines, then using the corner of my brush. If you do a couple little short lines like that in little dabs, you'll have an instant knot. That's all it takes. And you want to have a few shadows in between just to separate them so it doesn't look like a big white blob. And then just brightening this up a little bit more with my titanium white. So there's a little line that goes down right there on a bit of an angle down towards his mouth. And then black right underneath. I'm going to soften with my finger to make it look like a shadow. And then a few more little dabs in here for that knot with my liner brush. And then I'm going to pull right through here with a thick amount of paint. So this painting is all done, you guys. I want to thank you so much for joining me. I hope I inspired you, and I can't wait to see your versions of this painting. Have a wonderful day, happy painting, and I'll see you next time. Bye!